Lillahi ta'ala. Correct your intentions. Barakallahu feekum. All right, we're going to continue here in the book of abstinence. This is the end of the book of abstinence here, and I think we're going to have time left. We're going to go back to the beginning, inshallah. If we didn't read this chapter we're about to read now, then we could say we finished the book of fasting. Of course, with summary. Because i'tikaf is not fasting, it's a different worship. But like I told you, they annexed this chapter to the book of fasting because of its observance in Ramadan, in the Masjid. I'tikaf means dwelling, staying, adhering. This is a very easy worship. It is simply being in the masjid with an intention longer than the time of tuma'nina. Being in the masjid with an intention a time longer than tuma'nina. What intention? The intention of i'tikaf, the intention of being in the masjid. That easy. That means you could stop by a masjid, go inside of there, yani find the border where the masjid starts, get inside of that border, make the intention of i'tikaf, be there for a moment, and then step out of there. That's valid worship. It has four integrals. The mu'takif, that's the person who does i'tikaf. He's going to be a Muslim who's mumayyiz, has mental discerning, and not menstruating or having postpartum bleeding. And it requires a masjid, not a musalla. It requires an intention, like now I do i'tikaf. And it requires dwelling, a dwelling in the masjid, a staying in the masjid, not merely passing through, for longer than the pause between prayer movements. So to be lingering in the masjid without a condition of being still or sitting. Yani lingering in the masjid. That's what's the i'tikaf. So that's it. That's how you do it, I mean. The permission to leave does not require an emergency. That's for a person who vowed i'tikaf. We can come back to that. If a person made a vow to do i'tikaf. I'tikaf is invalidated by sexual intercourse or ejaculation by contact, like fasting, while conscious of the i'tikaf and knowing the prohibition, because that defies i'tikaf. But not by menses. I'tikaf is not invalidated by menses. If a woman made a vow to do it, if a woman made a vow to do an i'tikaf for some time and then her menses came, this does not invalidate her i'tikaf. She will leave the masjid, and when her menses is over, she'll come back and complete the time that she intended, that she vowed, the time that she pledged. But these will invalidate the i'tikaf, the sexual intercourse or the ejaculation by contact, while conscious of the i'tikaf. Okay, so that's i'tikaf. Very easy. Any question? That's why you would hear some of our mashayikh when they give the lesson in the masjid. They would remind the people, make the intention of i'tikaf in the masjid while you listen to the lesson. All right. So let's go back up to the top here. You said, Sheikh, she can continue afterwards? Yes. If she made a vow, she has to continue. If her menses interrupted the time of her vow, her nazar, she has to come back and finish it. All right, so we're back at the top here. Kitab al-Siyam, the book of abstinence, the book of refraining. So I'll go ahead and read. It says, the book of fasting is advanced ahead of the book of pilgrimage. Meaning, so you see this file by itself here. But had it been compiled with the other books, then it's going to be first Kitab al-Tahara, book of purity. Then Kitab al-Salah, book of prayer. Then Kitab al-Zakah, book of zakat. Then Kitab al-Siyam, book of fasting. Then Kitab al-Hajj, book of Hajj. Then al-Buyu', sales. So the book of fasting is advanced ahead of the book of pilgrimage. In the books of fiqh, that is. Because it is greater. Fasting is a greater worship than Hajj. And in observance of the order mentioned in Gabriel's hadith. The order we just mentioned is the order that's in Hadith Jibreel. Footnote. That is, Bunya al-Islamu ala khams. Islam is built upon 5. Shahadati Allah ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. The testimony that no one is God except Allah and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Wa iqami salati wa ita'i zakah wa sawmi Ramadan wa hajjil bayt. Observing the prayer, paying the zakah, fasting Ramadan, and seeking the house, seeking out the house, making pilgrimage to the Kaaba. These don't need to be big letters here. Ramadan will be big letters, and the house is going to be a big letter. In our law, fasting is defined as intentionally abstaining from any mufattir, any fast breaker, throughout a daytime that is accepting of the abstinence. That daytime is accepting. We could say throughout an acceptable daytime for fasting, for the abstinence. That works too. Slightly different meaning though. A daytime that is accepting kind of gives the daytime a personification in a way. A daytime that accepts the abstinence. That's why I like it this way better. But maybe more streamlined if we say throughout an acceptable daytime, etc. It was also defined as a specifically timed way of abstention that has conditions, a way of abstention, not abstention from everything. And in any way, it always amuses me when I talk to a non-Muslim person who says that he fasts, and then he tells me what he eats or drinks while fasting. Subhanallah, maybe you encountered some of those. By a person with specific qualities, so a specifically timed way of abstention that has conditions. By a person with specific qualities. Okay, so you have a good idea about what this means. You know how there's a lot of meaning compacted in there. Mubarak. Al-Basir said, fasting is a type of abstention. It is an abstention, some kind of, with a specific intention from any fast breaker, mufattir, throughout an entire daytime that accepts the abstinence. Let's say it this way here, then we can have both ways. Throughout an entire acceptable daytime for abstinence. Acceptable daytime for abstinence. Performed by a pubescent, sane Muslim who is pure from menses and postpartum bleeding. All that's clear for you, inshallah. When we say pubescent here, then what are we talking about? Talking about the obligation. This definition here is a definition for obligatory fasting by adding pubescent in the definition, since pubescence is not a condition for a valid fast. Interesting. So first definition here, intentionally abstaining from any mufattir throughout a daytime that is accepting of the abstinence. This one does not exclude a sunnah fast. A specifically timed way of abstention that has conditions by a person with specific qualities. Also, this one does not. This one, fasting is an abstention with a specific intention from any mufattir throughout an entire acceptable daytime for abstinence, performed by a pubescent, sane Muslim who is pure from menses and postpartum bleeding. Just by the insertion of the word pubescent, he limited the definition to an obligatory fast. Okay, so that's good enough right there. So, fasting is defined as intentionally abstaining from any mufattir throughout a daytime that is accepting of the abstinence. It was also defined as a specifically timed way of abstention that has conditions by a person with specific qualities. It was made obligatory in the month of Sha'ban. So the month before Ramadan, Allah revealed to the Prophet ﷺ the month before Ramadan that they had to fast the month of Ramadan. It was made obligatory in the second year after the migration in the month of Sha'ban. Yes. This obligation is confirmed in the book, the Sunnah, and the consensus, which means what? Yani, It means it's confirmed in the book, in the Sunnah, and the consensus. And it's known in the religion by necessity. And this obligation is known in the religion by necessity. Which means if you deny that, then that's blasphemy. So, yeah, let's see some more footnotes here. So the book of fasting is advanced ahead of the book of pilgrimage. Footnote. It is called siyam or som, which means imsak. That's the Arabic meaning for siyam or som. Imsak, which means abstention, to refrain, and hold oneself back from something. That's linguistic meaning. Siyam and som, they have the same meaning. Both of those are source nouns, masdar, for sama yasumu. You say sama yasumu sawma, or sama yasumu siyama, fahuwa sa'im. So that's the linguistic meaning of siyam or som, even if from other than food, even if the abstention were from other than food. That would be a siyam. We are informed in the Quran about Lady Maryam fasting from speaking. She said, as Allah told us, Inni, yani she was commanded to say, Inni nadartu lirrahmani sawma. I have certainly vowed a song for the sake of Ar-Rahman. What's that song? This means that she was refraining from speaking. In the laws of previous prophets, this was valid, but in the laws of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, such a vow would not be valid, would be invalid. It's not valid in the law of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this song. So it's confirmed in the book, the Sunnah, and the consensus. Here's a footnote too. As for the book, Allah says, Kutiba alaykumus siyam. Fasting has been made obligatory upon you. The fasting mentioned in this verse has been interpreted to refer to the fasting of Ramadan in particular. As-siyam here is the fasting of Ramadan in particular. There's other fastings though, like you came to know. Like fasting for kafara. The four integrals of fasting. Integrals, usually we're taking that from the Arabic word arkan, the integrals. Here, though, Abu Shuja called them obligations, the obligations of fasting. And integral and obligation are interchangeable in the talk of the fuqaha. In the talk of the fuqaha, the jurists or the scholars of fiqh, they use integral and obligation interchangeably. But the word obligation or wajib or farud does have broader application than rukn, integral. The word obligation or farud has broader application than the word rukn, integral. But they use integral, they use farud to mean integral, the fuqaha. You'll know it by the context. Al-Basir said, as the author of Al-Anwar said, fasting has four integrals. So this is a nice list here, four integrals, because in maybe a lot of documents that don't list the integrals like this. And what would be missing is the daytime as an integral. So you would see in some books, the integrals of fasting are, like, they might not say the person, for example. They might not say the Sa'im himself is an integral. They would say the intention and refraining or something like that. So this is the saying that's being taken right here. Four integrals for fasting, if you want to memorize a number. A person, a Sa'im, there are conditions that make one obligated to fast. Being Muslim. Its details are like those of prayer and zakah. Its details are like those of prayer and zakah. Which means what? Means other than a Muslim is a kafir. And kafir is two kinds. Original kafir and apostate. Original kafir and apostate, they both have something in common. And they have something different too. What they have in common, that both of them are accountable for fasting, even though they're not Muslims. What they have different about them, that if the original kafir embraces Islam, he won't have to make up anything that he missed while he was a kafir. The apostate, though, according to the Shafi'i school, is going to have to make up uh, whatever passed during his days of apostasy, whether he did physically fast or not. Wasn't valid if he did. So he has to make it up or repeat it. So its details are like those of prayer and zakah. Footnote, it is not valid from an original blasphemer because he is not among the people of valid worship. Yes. Therefore, he is not requested to fast in this lifetime. Yeah, we don't say to him, fast. Not as a kafir. Although he will be punished in the afterlife for not fasting because he was able to embrace Islam and then fast. It is not permissible to assist a non-Muslim to do anything that terminates a fast. It is not permissible to assist a non-Muslim to do anything that terminates a fast during the daytime. Anything that would terminate a fast. Despite that fasting on a state of blasphemy is invalid. Okay. Saying that mental discerning is a condition is better than saying sanity is a condition as far as wording is concerned. This means some scholars might say it this way, or some of them might say it that way. And if you want a better way, say mental discerning, tamyiz, being mumayyiz. There's a difference between being insane and not being mumayyiz. If you're mumayyiz, you're not insane. But if you're not mumayyiz, does not mean you are insane, like the little babies. They're not crazy, but they're not mentally discerning. The witless drunkard, someone who lost his mind by drinking, and the madman, someone who is fundamentally crazy, and anyone who fainted, who or is in a coma or is comatose, which is deeper than sleep, not mere sleep, from before dawn until after sunset, those are not requested to fast. This day is not counted for them. And this one who fainted, he's not counted as insane also. He's not counted as insane. Rather, his mental discerning is temporarily lost. Fasting is not obligatory on the child that has not reached puberty. So puberty is condition for obligation. So it says up here, there are conditions that make one obligated to fast. This word is important right here so that this talk fits here. Fasting is not obligatory on the child that has not reached puberty, but it is valid after mental discerning, after the child becomes mumayyiz. He is ordered to fast at 7 lunar years if he has discerning. Yani both of those, 7 lunar years and mental discerning. And number 3, and can withstand fasting. Then he's ordered to fast. I asked Sheikh Muhammad Bakri, if such a child who was commanded to fast cries, do we feed him? He said, yeah, we feed him, and we encourage him to try again. And he is spanked at 10 years old if he does not fast, if that benefits him, which means if that makes him fast, like the prayer. Like the prayer, yani what? He is ordered to pray at 7 lunar years if he has discerning, and spanked at 10 if he does not pray. If that benefits him, that means makes him pray. The condition of the ability to fast is missing from some copies of Abu Shuja, rahimahullah. The condition of the ability to fast is missing from some copies of Abu Shuja. Why you said that here? Because this book is taken from explanations of Abu Shuja. The text of Abu Shuja, as famous as it is in the Shafi'i school, as a beginner's text, it has numerous copies. And those copies are not consistent, all of them. They have inconsistencies between them. like having a case or not having a case, having a chapter or not having a chapter, or having two chapters or having both of them under one chapter, or in different order. Inability is physical or religious. Here's a footnote. If unable to fast, or fasting would be followed up by a strong difficulty, like the difficulty that permits tayammum. Oh, okay. What is this physical inability? Inability is physical or religious. What is the physical inability? When one cannot fast, sometimes this person case cannot fast. It's going to make him worse. Or fasting would lead to a strong difficulty. Hmm. Those words are ambiguous. Sometimes you will understand something when you find yourself in that situation. And sometimes you still might not. You might be in that situation, you still might not be sure. Like the difficulty that permits tayammum. So if you remember the chapter of tayammum with its details about sickness getting stronger even if it doesn't last longer, or sickness lasting longer even if it doesn't get stronger, or other things like this, such as the fear of death. So those are difficulties that permit tayammum. So such difficulties are the kind that permit breaking the fast. Yani, that's going to be counted as inability. Sometimes some of the Muslims, they have very stringent thinking, very tight uh, literal mindset in a way that is rigid. So that if it were said the inability, physical inability, they don't understand what that means. Like, for example, you know how sometimes you have the train track, and the train track has a third rail. If you touch it, you can get electrocuted. So it's dangerous. You don't go there. So what if there was the name of Allah there in that train track? And the kind, especially, you have to go down. You have to go down in there to get it and then climb back out. So would it be said that you are able? It can be said that you're not able here. You could look there and say, I am not able. That's going to be true. Just to make you understand what inability means a lot of times. Inability is physical or religious. Religious means menses or postpartum bleeding, like we're going to say. So the first has two cases. The first, which is physical inability, has two cases by consensus. The unbearably sick who might hope for a cure or not, and the elderly. Two cases by consensus. The sick person and the elderly person are counted by consensus as physically unable. Unbearably sick, that is. Elderly means the one who can't fast, though. Some people, Allah Ta'ala blesses their bodies. They would be old, and they don't look so old. It's like they don't age much. Slowly, as if they age slowly. Similar to the sick are pregnant and nursing women who fear for themselves and or their babies. So, we missed some footnotes here. So, the first has two cases by consensus. Inability, physical inability, has two cases by consensus. The first of those two cases is the unbearably sick. Let's see this footnote here. If the sickness is constant, then he is allowed to not make the intention at nighttime. If it is recurring, coming and going, like one who is feverish sometimes and not other times, he has fever that comes and goes. Then, if he's feverish at the time of starting the fast, it's permissible for him to abandon the intention at nighttime. So it means his fever came back. It's almost Fajr. Now he's going to not intend. What's the point here? Well, he doesn't know. Maybe his fever will go right away, right before Fajr, and then he can fast, for example. So the meaning of this case right here is if he's feverish at the time of starting the fast, it is permissible for him to abandon the intention at nighttime. It means to say he doesn't have to wait to the last moment before dawn to be sure and then abandon his intention. Or else he is obligated to intend at night. And if that's not his case, it's not clear for him he's not going to be able to fast. He makes his intention at night. And if he needs to break his fast, he'll break it anyway. If he gets sick after that, then he'll break his fast. This one, like he gets his fever. So that's nice case there. It tells you how to intend in such case. All of this is if he did not fear death. If he feared death, he is obligated to break the fast. All of this, what does that mean? All of this means this consideration here. Do I intend or do I not intend? How should I go about it here? This is if he did not fear death. If he feared death, then he doesn't have to think about it here. Then he's obligated to break the fast. Al-Isnawi copied this obligation from a group of scholars, and Al-Adhra'i was certain about its correctness. If the person is harmed by sickness or pain that is unbearable, then breaking the fast is better. And if he will lose an organ or its benefit, then fasting is forbidden for him. If he will lose an organ or its benefit as a result of the fasting, then fasting is forbidden for him. If the person is harmed by sickness or pain that is unbearable, then breaking the fast is better. Then there's a question here about migraine. Someone made, for me, I think, an important point. Migraine is not merely a headache. Maybe someone would see migraine just means strong headache. So I didn't hear anything about migraine here. Okay. So physically unable includes the unbearably sick. Now, this one who's sick, he has two cases. He might hope for cure, or he might not hope for cure. So if he does hope for cure, if this sick person hopes for cure, this sick person who cannot fast hopes for cure, then what is his rule? If the sick person hopes for a cure, what is his rule? Tell me, please. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If the sick person hopes for a cure, yes, somebody took the mic?
Yes. So
Yes.
he would say, uh, oh shucks, what's the name of what's the word? Expiation. But he would not have to make it up.
No,
Okay, so he has to make it up and not pay an expiation.
that's correct. He has to make it up and not pay an expiation. Correct.
That's the hope for cure.
Yes. Barakallahu fikum. So this unbearably sick one, he might hope for cure or he might not hope for cure. So if he hopes for cure, then what does he have to do? He just makes it up, and he doesn't have to pay anything. If he does not hope for cure, then he's not going to have to make it up. So he's going to have to pay something. And the elderly, here's a footnote. Linguistically, the sheikh is the one who exceeded 50 years of age. And the ajuz, elderly, is even older. I was saying senior citizen until somebody told me that's potentially confusing. Because to me, senior citizen means like really old person, i.e., the one who has reached the extent of old age. Extent of old age in the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is around 60 years old. And that's around the time when the woman can expect to become menopausal or to be. But like most important thing here is just literally the fact that this person can't fast. And maybe this elderly person can muster up some strength to fast sometimes, and then might fast. And if so, then it will be valid. Same thing for this sick person. Thing is that this sick person and this elderly person, they have the permission to break the fast. Similar to the sick are pregnant and nursing women. Footnote, even if she's a hired nursing woman, and a man can hire his own wife to nurse her baby. That's valid. A woman can be hired by her child's father to nurse the baby, and she doesn't have to. And if she doesn't, then he can hire someone else to nurse his baby. So even if she's a hired nursing woman, she has permission to break her fast if she fears. Or even if she's a volunteer. But not when there is no nursing woman who is not fasting. Or who is fasting and unharmed by nursing. So I think that's clear for you. So this nursing woman, she can break her fast if she fears for herself and or the baby. Fearing for the baby means to fear running out of milk. So she can break her fast. And we're taking a detail here. Even if she's a hired one. In fact, even if she's a volunteer. But not if there is a nursing woman who's not fasting. She can do it then. And then this other one won't volunteer. Or one who is fasting but unharmed by nursing, then she'll do it. And then this other one will not volunteer. So similar to the sick are the pregnant and nursing women who fear for themselves and or their babies. They fear for themselves and or. That's English convention there. You could say either one of those. I don't have to say both of them. And that's also in Arabic. Wow can mean oh. And oh could mean wow. That means and could mean or. Or could mean and. So even if we just said one of these, it's still right. It's not excluding anything here. The women who fear for themselves and their babies or their babies. Looks like or is stronger though, but and or their babies, now it's very clear. So that means both or one. But whenever it's not personal, whenever the fear is not personal, the fear is only for the baby and not on a personal level, then what's the rule? When the pregnant or nursing woman fears not for herself, only for the baby, then tell me what's the rule, please. 5.
Expiation, she has to pay.
Yes. And
Of course, she has to make it up.
she has to make it up. So she has to make it up and she has to pay the redemption payment, let's say. The fidya. Barakallahu fikum.
Amin wa fikum.
May Allah grant both of you sisters an accepted dua. Ameen. Yes.
The one who breaks her fast because of her fear for the baby, isn't that the one who pays the fidya and makes up the fast?
Yes.
Okay,
Only
but
for the baby. Only for the baby. Not for herself.
So she only fears for the baby, then she makes it up
Yes.
and she pays the fidya, right?
Yes. Yes.
Barakallahu fikum.
Ameen wa fikum. And if they fear for the babies, it does not matter whether the child was harmed or not. Yani, it's enough for her to be afraid. And it's not a condition that a harm is verified for the child, as said by Judge Hussein. But you're going to break your fast so that the baby doesn't get harmed anyway. And the second kind of inability, the religious kind, is the menstrual and postpartum bleeding, which that's clear. So there's no detail here. There's no footnote here. And we should stop there. MashaAllah. That's nice review. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك